Carolyn, you were first to raise your hand.
Really nice idea. I like that a lot. I just have two suggestions. One is instead of does not matter, more like what you said, never thought about it or not applicable. Because, for example, I might not rate the security of my neighborhood as a critical parameter, and it's not because it doesn't matter. It's because I live in a secure neighborhood.
Yeah,
So,
fair enough. Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I understand the distinction between the two phrases. Yeah.
And the second is I like the idea of giving them the sort of fill in the blank for these different variables that we as scientists think are important. But I bet you there's something that we think that we don't realize is important to them that is not in our list of demographic variables. So you could add an open text, choose another domain, or is there something else, and then have them include that the level of that, whatever that means.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So I mean, like you said, we can't cover everything that everybody would think is important, and I think the open text would control for that a bit
and give you a sense of what is important to other people. Could be useful, but very nice idea.
I think Chris, go ahead.
This is maybe a bit left field. Well, first not left field. So I like Carolyn's idea. I feel like we should. One thing that's striking me is that a lot of people are writing code for interfaces for sliders and for generating vignettes and stuff. And I wonder if we should be organizing to share that code a little bit more. I really feel like for the exercise that you're trying to do, we should not let technology limit it. And I wonder if the ideal interface in your case is actually that people, rather than having the list already set there, is that people have a very long menu or can access things and click on them or drag them in, and then the options appear or something. So you get the extra information about what people think is important when they just start reflecting. I don't know what to do with any of that data, but I just wonder whether there's if programming was free, what your interface would look like, I guess is one way to frame that. And then hesitantly, I just want to throw out this. I have colleagues who I'm quite passionate about having positive visions of the future. And I have a colleague who is, going around to communities all over the planet and talking about scenarios for 50 or 100 years from now. What does life look like? I think it's extremely important for us to start doing that kind of thinking, society and individually, to and I wonder whether there's any work along the lines of what you're trying to do, where we think about describing life far in the future. So when we really relax all of the constraints that we have now that are not just in, what job I'm going to be able to have in the 5 years, but really how society is working and treating us. Anyway, I'll leave that there. Thanks.
Yeah, so those are two really very interesting questions. So the first one about the interface. So for our methodology, we were not limited by the interface. It was more of the cognitive costs, as you say, for someone trying to fill in the survey. When you present them with a menu with thousands and thousands of potential different options, firstly, they will take them a long time to figure out what's important to them, and if they have a specific thing in mind already, like finding it in the list or something like that. But I think the methodology that we chose was kind of a balance between like having a completely open response and having a completely numerical closed response. And I'm not saying that we found the perfect balance, but it's something that we've iterated a bit when trying it on our own selves. Like how would we think about this and answer the question. And the second thing about the ideal lives, I agree that it's very important from a policy perspective to look at where you would like to be in the future, because then you can say, okay, where would we like to be, and then where are we now, and how do we get there? And to some extent, we could use our vignette to do that, just asking a different question. So like, what kind of life would you like people to live? But I think we haven't thought about doing it for this survey, but it's definitely something that future research can focus on.
Yeah, I think generally our thinking about utopias is way worse than our thinking about dystopias. There's definitely a space there. I'm not sure if it's for social scientists though. I think next was Claudia, I hope.
Yeah, it was more of a question. Is very, so what you want to do is like create a character in the film. So you want to create somebody whose happiness is 7. And there are different dimensions in the life of that character. So you want to move the scroller in terms of income and different dimensions. But I don't know. Maybe it's going to be very difficult to because all these things may be substitutable or complementary. Wouldn't it be? I wonder if you had in mind rather to leave one space blank, so everything would be set except one thing. So this character has this and this and that, the characteristics. You want him to be 5 on the 0-10 scale. Where do you have to put the, how do you have to value the, I don't know, his marital situation or income in order for him to reach that scale? Another idea, I wrote this proposal for the European Social Survey once, but we did not win the tender. It was to use some, series that everybody watch. And if you want to touch this consistency scale, there are some things that everybody watches. And, the problem with the vignette is that it leaves an enormous space for interpretation. John is 52, he earns 20,000 euros. What does it mean? If you're depressed, you're going to think that this is gloomy. If you're in love, you're going to think, wow, this is great.
Ah, that's amazing.
But if you take this character, I don't know, like, the series that everybody watched, I think it's very exhaustive. It really fills the space of interpretation, and maybe everybody feels the same way about the character. So now you will know, depending on whether they give the same grade, if they scale differently or not. I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe
Yeah, those are two really interesting ideas, which Casper and I can explore further. I guess the thing about, I think the problem would be trying to find a character that people all know about, but I think that's of a second order. In theory, if you
everybody watched, I don't know, Narcos or Prison Break, or I don't know, Le Bureau de Nuit.
Yeah.
The Simpsons.
I was Jerry Seinfeld, but maybe I'm old.
Succession.
I think Katja was next.
Actually, I wanted to say something which was very much in line with what Claudia just said about the trade-offs, in a sense that there is more than one answer of what is for. So maybe you would want to also ask them, what do they actually value more? Like which domain they find more important? Because to an extent, it could be that if I'm not caring about incomes at all, if you leave me only income to change, it's not going to change my life satisfaction. But if I say that, okay, this is what matters, maybe you can get on some trade-offs, how much of one I can sacrifice to get a bit more of another. Maybe it's because given how multidimensional is that, I guess the more you can make it narrow to what is really important, maybe it's going to be easier to analyze at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like your idea, and I guess Casper and I will discuss it a bit further, because you're right about the sort of the many-to-one mapping, which we hadn't really considered.
There was also generally the problem when we piloted it, that most people we gave it to just got super exhausted after out of filling out 2 of them, and it would just turn crazy expensive to field that survey at scale. So those are all ideas that reduce cost in some way, cognitive and monetary cost. I realize, we're okay on time. I think Michael was also raising his hand, and then Miriam as well.
Yeah, so I think it's quite kind of clever to reverse the vignette, but I guess I share Katja and Claudia's concern that I don't know what you're going to learn because there are so many different ways you could be a 3 or a 5, so I just don't know what you end up learning, because you just want that here's one way you can get this answer, but I mean, what does that tell you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's where we were hoping to get multiple vignettes for an individual, so we can kind of see, when someone makes their vignette for a 4, and then they make their vignette for an 8, for example, and then you can see, okay, so within this vignette, with a 4 vignette, they put an income of like £20,000, and then for the 8 vignette, they've kind of put their income still at kind of £20,000. And so maybe income isn't that important for them. And I think that goes back to, then we could still elicit that using Katja's question. We're just like asking people to rank the importance of things. And I think Dan Benjamin also had a paper where he got people to report the importance of different things when they were answering the life satisfaction question.
But I'm kind of wondering which problem you're trying to solve, and that would tell you more about what people think constitutes, what people think contributes to levels of well-being, rather than tells you how they use their scale. Sort of a separate question.
So if I can make 2 comments on that. I mean, the first one is that there's sort of precedent for the sort of idea that we're having here. I mean, in the old days, the stuff from Van Praag and his people, the Leiden school, essentially did that, but only did it with income, where they essentially asked, okay, how much money would make you a 6, how much money would make you a 5, and so on. And all this really is generalizing it to various life domains. And then, so on your
they've
second,
got some extra assumptions they can use. Anyway, so I'm taking up too much space.
And so the second point is that in the standard vignette methodology, we're already making a fairly strong assumption about, that this is sort of the stuff that matters to people, and that it matters in the same way to all of these people. And these make your own vignette idea can be read as testing that particular assumption. But yeah, Miriam, you had a question or a comment or an idea.
Well, actually, it is similar to what Claudia and Katja and Michael said. My concern is that you will not learn so much, but have you considered asking people to devise vignettes, not for an 8 or a 4, but a few for an 8? Because there are more vignettes possible for a similar number on a scale, given the multidimensionality of the vignettes. Would that be a way to move forward? And I know it is quite a respondent burden, but then you can see how, for example, income relates to, can be compensated by other aspects that make your life good, which you miss now when you only use one vignette, one of the possible vignettes given one number. Would that be something you can consider, or what do you think about it?
Casper, do you have something to say?
So my initial worry would be that a respondent might be a little flabbergasted by, I just answered what an 8 would be for me. Why are you asking me this again? But I suppose if you frame it right, quite a lot could be learned from it. And I mean, what I generally take all of your comments to be is generally a little bit of unclarity on how to tackle the data, then what sort of analysis to do, and I think that's the key area that we should think further about.